Good afternoon and welcome to our third session of the Banwell Parish Council Easter Food Club. I am absolutely delighted to have Anita and Chris with us this afternoon. First, thanks to Stonebridge Farm and Banwell Garden Centre, also the Trussell Trust and Banwell and Churchill School for just supporting us with this new initiative. I will hand over, because I'm very excited for my spaghetti and meatballs, it's straight to Anita and Chris.
Good afternoon.
Hello, everyone. We will get started. We'll just say hello and go on, chef.
Spaghetti and meatballs. Right. First thing we're going to do is fill a pan with some water. Add a splash of oil to the pan of water, which will just help keep the pasta separate. And pinch of salt, and then we'll put that on to come to the boil while we do everything else. Put that on the heat, medium heat, and then you can largely forget about that for 10 minutes or so. On to making the meatballs. There is one slight diversion from the recipe that was sent out. We'll get that to that in a bit. It's to do with the breadcrumbs. I will show you that in a second. To start off, take a large bowl. Into that large bowl, put your mince. So, and add your sausages. Should be about 4 sausages, roughly 250 grams. To get to the sausage meat, just run a knife down them and split them out of the skin like that. Very easy. Keep doing that with all 4. Then you have sausage meat out. Discard the used sausage skins. No further use for those. What we're going to do then is give that a little bit of a mix before we add any of the other ingredients to it, just so that you've got a kind of reasonable spread of the ingredients, a mix between the two, because otherwise you'll end up with different bits in different parts of different meatballs, which isn't the idea at all. So just give it a good mix. Right, that's reasonably mixed up, that'll do for the moment. So to that, we are going to add a clove of garlic, take that in the skin. If you haven't got a garlic crusher, don't worry, just flatten the clove of garlic with the flat of the blade of the knife, like that, and then chop it up nice and small. That's the same effect as using a garlic crusher. Or you can use garlic paste if you happen to have any in the house. So it's just an helpful advisement. The next step is the bit I warned you about, the slight variation on the recipe. Ordinarily, if you're making breadcrumbs, you'd use stale bread. It's easier, it doesn't clump together when you're trying to break it up. Obviously here you've got nice fresh bread, which is great, but isn't great for the breadcrumbs. So what we're going to do, you make it a bowl. It was going into the mix anyway. And into that, we are going to break a slice of bread. So just take it into little bits like that. Imagine you've gone down to feed the ducks, and there's a lot of ducks and only one slice of bread. And you're feeling guilty because you don't want to give it all to one duck. So break it up into nice little bits. This will do the job instead of dried breadcrumbs. Now I know that we've got one viewer with an egg allergy. That's fine. Just ignore the bit about the egg. Instead of using the egg, a couple of tablespoons of the plain yogurt, which I believe you've been supplied with, will have the same effect. Once you've finished feeding the ducks, like so, and you just mash that in to the beaten egg. Everything's coated. Try and squidge it down a bit if you can. As you're getting. Break up the larger bits of bread in there as well. Soak it all well into the egg. Use the backside of the fork to mush it all down. Mushed up, that's great because it stops you getting large chunks of bread in your meatball mix. Give it a good old squidge with a fork. Something like that when you're finished. Add that to your meatball mix. Then add your grated parmesan. Parmesan's optional. If you don't like it, you have it in the store cupboard, it doesn't matter, you don't need it, but it's nice, adds to the flavour. If you really don't like parmesan, you can always substitute cheddar. But parmesan, because it grates nice and finely, probably easier to combine into the meatballs and gives it a slightly different flavour. So we would use parmesan. Just grate your parmesan into your mix, like so. Keep going until it's all gone. Go. Next, I'm going to add a little bit of herb mix. You can measure it out if you want, about a teaspoon will do. I'm just going to judge it by eye. Gently on with the style, just slapping in. But be careful you don't put too much in because otherwise your meatballs will taste of nothing but the herbs. And then, all important seasoning. Good grind pepper in there. Get the grinder to work. Export.
Hang on a minute.
And a sprinkling of salt. Don't listen to anybody that tells you you shouldn't be putting salt in your food. You want too much in there. If you haven't got the salt and pepper in there, the food tastes bland. You need the salt to bring out the flavour.
No, still not working.
Okay, and then mix it all up. So we've probably got enough pepper for this. I want some for the sauce as well. So just mixing all in together, trying to make sure all the ingredients are nicely combined. You got standout lumps of any sausage meat or breadcrumbs or anything. Nicely combined, like so. The next stage is to make your meatballs. For that, you want a bowl of flour, plain, self-raising, doesn't matter for what we want it for. So the first step, flour your own hands. Just get a bit of flour, rub it over your hands. Makes a bit of a mess, but it will stop the meatballs sticking to your hands. And then you take a small scoop of the meatball mix. About that much. What we're aiming for is something that's about the size of Cadbury's cream egg, only round, or a small golf ball. So what we want to do is make these as evenly sized as possible. You can make them bigger if you want bigger ones. It's irrelevant. It doesn't matter as long as you can get them roughly the same size. But they will take a lot longer to cook if they're bigger. So when you've got it rounded off, pop it in the flour, roll it around, and coat it in flour. Do the same again. Just roll it like you used to do when you were 4 years old with your Play-Doh. We've all done it. It was either making these or it was making words, one or the other. That was about as far as I ever got with Play-Doh. And then again, just coat it with flour. Keep doing that. We can do that. And the whole of this mix, this is the bit that takes the time. The rest of this, timed it yesterday when I was cooking it. And start to finish, I reckon you can cook this and have it on it in a plate on the table, 45 minutes. But this is the bit that takes the time. So why are we flouring the meatballs? Well, 2 reasons. Firstly, it'll help stop them sticking in the pan, which you really don't want, because if they get stuck in the pan and fall apart when you're cooking them, it's an absolute pain. Secondly, it helps to form a nice crust on the outside of the meatballs. And when you are cooking pretty much any sort of meat, if the recipe says to brown it, or even if it doesn't usually, this is what it's after. The whole idea is to caramelize the sugars on the outside of the meat, form a nice crust, because that's where all the flavour comes from. If you can get a really nice crust on the outside of the meatballs, that's going to make an enormous difference to the way the final dish tastes. As Anita says, that's the so-called, is it the 5th or is it the 6th?
5th sense, isn't it?
You've got, I think you've got, or we used to have 4 taste sensations that were recognised as sweet, sour, salt, and
Bitter?
possibly bitter. And then, not that long ago, they came up with a 5th one, which was umami, which is kind of like a savoury flavour. And that savoury flavour, that's what you get when you brown meat on the outside of meat. That's why if you cook a steak and you don't cook it hot enough or fast enough so that it just kind of sits in the pan, bubbles, you get very little flavour off it. Whereas you get it with a nice high heat in a good pan, and you can get it really caramelising on the outside, get a good crust on it. That will taste fantastic. That's what you're always after. Same if you are making a beef casserole and you've got chopped up beef that you're using to make the casserole. If you're making chicken pie with chopped up chicken, or you're making fajitas or whatever, you're browning the meat off before and get a really good crust on it. And this is the bit where, if you've got small children in the house, which I assume you have, or if you aren't small children, if you've got parents in the house, you can get them to come in and help you make your meatballs, so that it doesn't take forever. Now, out of the mix that we had on the recipe, which was 250 grams of mince and 250 grams of sausage meat, I reckon if you are doing Cadbury's cream egg size meatballs, you should get roughly somewhere between 18 and 20 meatballs out of that. Which, if you're serving 4, which is what the recipe was designed to serve, would be about right. That's kind of 4 or 5 meatballs for each adult portion, which should be plenty with the sauce and the pasta. If you are feeding a larger family, I know there's at least one family that's going to be watching that there are 6 of you. Just scale the recipe up. So where it says 250 grams of mince, you'd be looking at somewhere around 375, 400 grams of mince and around 375, 400 grams of sausage meat. And scale the other bits up as well, and it should work fine. And of course, the other thing is, if you are a family of 1 or 2, you can still do the full quantity because it freezes brilliantly. If you excuse me, you will find you get very scuzzy hands at the end of that, and you will want to wash them regularly. Right. Excuse me while I have my back to the camera and I'm washing my hands. Now, you may find by now your water is boiling. If so, just turn it right down to a simmer, and you can leave it just on a gentle simmer for the time being. You have to excuse me if I tidy up as I go. Looking in a messy kitchen. Can't do it. Right. So there we go. At the end of that, we've got 4, 8, 12. Okay, we've got 16 meatballs. So I'm a little bit shy of the 18 to 20 that I said. I've obviously been a little bit overly generous, but we're close. So next, what we're going to do is brown the meatballs off. So I'm going to put a large frying pan on the stove, medium heat.
Yeah.
Into that saucepan, we will put 2 tablespoons of oil, whatever oil you've got. Doesn't really matter. I use olive oil. Doesn't really matter. We will just get that up to temperature. Right, so I'm just waiting for that to come up to temperature. What was I going to say? I was going to say something interesting and important. But instead of that, we'll try something else. In the recipe, I've suggested cooking the meatballs in batches. Again, going back to what I was saying about browning meat, you will find if you overcrowd a pan with meat, often you'll end up with juices coming out of the meat. You'll end up boiling it rather than browning it. Generally what you're after, because you won't get that nice crust on the outside of it. So generally, it's quite a good idea to fry off in small batches. For the sake of time today, I'm going to put all my meatballs in the pan in one go, completely contrary to what I've just told you. If you've got a bit more time, do it in 2 batches, do it in 3 batches, whatever's comfortable on the size of saucepan you've got, so that it's not crammed full. I think we'll be all right with these meatballs today. I think I can still get a crust on them, even though there's going to be quite a lot in the pan. But as a general rule, don't overcrowd the pan when you're trying to brown meat. You don't want it too hot, but you do want it to be able to get a decent crust, as I've said. I'm just turning that down a bit because it's starting to smoke now, which is about right. And then into that, we are going to pop all our meatballs.
Say it's smelling lovely.
That's the oil.
I think that was the pan you used yesterday, though, wasn't it? Which smells really nice of the meatballs that you did yesterday.
Oh, there you go. See, watch your fingers when you put the meatballs in the pan. The oil's hot and it hurts if you put your fingers in it. There you go. So, just got room to get all the meatballs in there. Ordinarily, I probably wouldn't put that many in one time, but you don't want to sit here and watch me browning off 3 lots of meatballs because that will take forever. So, 3 seconds while I wash down my chopping board. There we go. And now we will make, or at least prepare to make the sauce. And we go.
Back over here.
So, first thing I'm going to do, chop up the onion. And I cannot emphasise one of the most important things in your kitchen, a sharp knife. As you can get it. Sharper the knife is, the less chances you're going to injure yourself with it. Admittedly, if you do injure yourself, you might chop the finger off completely. But the whole point being, if you've got a sharp knife, you put less pressure on to cut. You've got more control over it, so you're less likely to injure yourself. Now, a little tip for cutting onions. You've probably seen 100 times in various different places now, but I'm going to go through it with you again. Take your whole onion, and I know I said half a large onion. That's what I call small to medium, so I'm going to use the whole thing. Cut the end off like that. Take that off, discard it. Turn it up so you've got, which I think is the root end. My lack of gardening skills here. Going upwards. Just cut straight through the root end. So you've got your onion looking like that. And then peel back again. Not so much to hold on to. Really massive, and you can hold on to it, or not particularly. Typically, I've got more of an awkward skin. Doesn't want to come off. But it keeps the onion together and stops it moving around when you try to cut it, which is a godsend. Then take your onion, slice down through towards the root end without going all the way to the end. And that holds it nicely together. And then you can just go down. You keep your thumb behind your fingers and your fingers in a line. You can use your fingers as a guide for the blade. And you've got nothing sticking out, which would end up getting cut off. Just going to have a quick look at the meatball before I do the other half, because then we turn in. So just, yeah, we turn them all over. You can see there, hopefully, on the video, that brown crust on the outside. That's what I was talking about when I was going on endlessly about browning the meat, getting that umami flavour. That's what you want to get on the outside. Because that's where all the flavour is. And that's going to add to the flavour of your meatballs, and it'll add to the flavour of your sauce. And really, the whole point of everything we're doing is to get flavour into it. Not much point cooking if you don't get something flavoursome. So that's what we're after. Then we'll just space them out a little bit, and then we'll leave them carry on browning while we go to round 2 with the onion. So it's just the same again. Slice down. You can see how easy that is with a sharp knife. No pressure needed. I'm not having to force it down, just glides through. Which means I control the knife the whole way through, and I'm less likely to cut my fingers off. Rid of that. Don't need that. Cut the knife down. There's your onion. Next, we're going to do another clove of garlic. So we will just take the garlic and remove its jacket. Not a formal meal. So, the garlic, again, the recipe is only really a guide. If you like your garlic, if you like things really garlicky, Another clothing if you fancy. Won't hurt. And if you're all eating the same meal, nobody will know anything. Open the tin tomatoes. So then really you're just waiting for the meatballs to brown. So this is why I didn't want to do it in several batches, because my repartee is probably not sufficient to keep us all amused for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, while I brown off batches of meatballs. I will run out of things to say. I don't need to stand here uncomfortable, so I've just done do that. Where are we? Yeah, so back to the meatballs. Turn them up a little bit. Give them a bit of a shake to make sure they're all moving in the pan nice and freely. Then you turn them over now, so they're done on the bottom nicely. You get some of that nice crusting going on the outside of the meatballs. Get some real umami going. It always makes you think of it reads, which I know for any of you school-age children, you will not understand that reference at all. Just like I never really understood it reads. We used to do a TV show, was it Shooting Stars? It was called. Him and Bob Mortimer. And for some reason, one of his catchphrases is "Whoa!" which always makes me think of umami. No idea why.
You have loads of people YouTubing that now.
Yeah, possibly. It was absolutely mad. I never understood what was going on. I'm not sure anybody did, including Dick and Rick Bob, to be honest. But it was fun. I'm sure it was probably them that invented umami. Then they discovered they were going to come up with this fifth sense. We used to have this thing where a dove would come down from the ceiling, the dove from above, and would ask some questions. It sounds incredibly random now you think about it.
Yeah, you're just thinking of, people are thinking you're a bit strange now.
That and a bald guy in a baby romper suit playing the drums badly. What more could you ask for in a TV show? So you can tell I'm filling now, can't you? While I wait for the meatballs to cook. So I think we are nearly there with the meatballs. The meatballs are going to have a bit of extra cooking time because they're going to go back into the sauce when we've made the sauce while the pasta cooks. So they'll have another 10 minutes to cook. They don't need to be cooked all the way through at this point. Okay. As long as you've got a nice crust, will probably do for the moment. So once you've got that nice crust going on, nice browning, you can take them out. And this is where I mean about the trying to get similar sizes makes a difference. If you're cooking this quickly, as I'm trying to do tonight, if they're all the same size, they will all take pretty much the same amount of time to cook, so that I know when I'm up against it for time that they'll be okay. If you've got bigger ones, or if you've got a mixture of big and small ones, you will need to check the big ones are cooked, even if you think the small ones are. Straight with the bleeding, obvious probably, but if you're cooking for somebody, it's a lovely thing to do. The last thing you want to do is give them food poisoning, because that's not. Okay, we will turn that heat down just a touch. Because we don't want to burn the onions, we want to brown them, cook them off. If you burn the onions, they will be very bitter in your sauce and not very pleasant. So, take your onions into your sauce frying pan, which you've just turned down. Add your onions, like so. Then get the garlic you prepared earlier. Add that to the onions in your pan. And give it a little bit of a stir around. Tiny bit of garlic skin there. Best avoided. Don't worry about using a clean pan or washing up the frying pan before you do the next step. The whole point again is to get all that flavour. And we've got all those nice meat juices and crispy bits from the meatballs that are in that frying pan, which we've now got as part of our sauce. Again, all about trying to get in as much flavour as we can. So while I'm doing this bit, while the onions are cooking gently, we are going to put our pasta on to cook. So turn the heat up on your water so that brings up to the boil. And we're going to weigh out the pasta. Now, I reckon 75 grams per person is a good, healthy amount of pasta. Might want less than that for a child, that's a good adult portion. So again, in the recipe, I've said 300 grams of spaghetti. Multiply it up or down by the number of people you want to cook for. So a small amount here. Useful tip for weighing it is the glass. Stops it rolling everywhere. You may find, if you experience with pasta, you can do it by eye. You can just measure it depending on the amount you have, and there are pasta rings which tell you how much you want. If you weigh it, you know exactly what you're doing. So the water's back up to the boil. Take spaghetti.
Yep, I'm coming.
The cameraman will follow me over. Right, put the spaghetti in the middle of the saucepan, just let it go. Yes, I know it doesn't fit. As it's in there, the pasta will soften, and as it's softened, it'll gradually just slide into the pan. So that needs to go in there for about 9 minutes. What we're looking for is for the pasta to come out so that it is ever so slightly firm to the bite. Al dente, as the Italians say. Nobody likes soggy pasta. Don't want it too hard. It's got to be cooked, but just so it's got a little bit of firmness to the bite. That's now submerged. Put my timer on for 9 minutes. We'll turn that to a gentle simmer, just so that you've got bubbles gently breaking on the surface of the water, not agitated and roiling. Okay, into our onions. We are now going to add some herbs. Same as I said when I was doing the meatballs. By all means, measure it out. A teaspoon is probably about right. Don't overdo it.
I've got a question.
Yeah, crack on.
Or do you want to do that
Just
first?
add my tomatoes to the sauce, and then by all means. Add a little bit of water to the tin to get all the flavour and all the tomato juice out of there. We add that there, like so. Right, crack on. What was the question?
I have a question from Daisy, who's watching.
Is it about Vic Reeves?
No, it's not about Vic Reeves. She says, does pasta water always need to be salted? And if so, why? I always forget.
I always salt mine. I think it helps to bring out some flavour in the pasta, but I don't think it is essential. I would argue that you should always put a splash of oil in there because it stops it sticking together, although, as I will show you later, you can use a little bit of the cooking water to help the pasta stop sticking. So no, I don't think salt is essential in the pasta water. It's essential in your sauce, and it is essential in your meatballs. Because as I said earlier, things will tend to taste fairly bland if they're not salted.
I've got a reply to that from Paul, a chap called Paul Harding, who says it raises the boiling point of the water. So there you go.
Which is absolutely right. Does that then mean that the alternative to putting salt in is to do it on top of a mountain? Well, I don't know. Of course, that raises the boiling point as well when you lower the pressure.
Easier to add salt.
Yeah, a lot easier. Most mountains don't come with cooking facilities. Right, so that's then the basis of your sauce. Leave that to simmer gently. Don't let it get too hot or bubble away too fast, or you'll end up with no sauce and it'll be very dry. If you've got any large bits of tomato out of the can, just kind of squash them down with the back of a spoon, like so. That's that. And you're going to add the meatballs and leave them to simmer gently for a bit. Spoon. What did I do with my spoon?
Spoon.
No. Tasting spoon. Did I have a tasting spoon?
I don't know whether you have a tasting spoon. You can have a tasting spoon. Okay.
And now we're just going to taste the sauce, check the seasoning. Which tells me I've forgotten something. This is why you always need to taste. Taste, taste, taste. Little sprinkling of sugar to the sauce. Doesn't need to be very much. I always tend to add a little bit of sugar when I'm cooking with tomatoes because it just helps to balance out the acidity of the tomatoes. But that's exactly why I say you must always taste what you're cooking frequently if it's good. It's hard to know what it tastes like and what you need to add, what you need to be doing with it, but you haven't tasted it. That's better. I knew some years back, 4 years back, I care to mention, a chef who worked in a pub. He was a vegetarian chef. Not bad chef, knew his stuff. No Marcus Waring, but he was a good chef, nice bloke. But he was a vegetarian chef. And he was cooking food in a pub that served predominantly meat dishes. Which meant he would never taste his cooking. Because obviously he was vegetarian, he didn't like to eat meat. Give your pan a stir every now and then. And your pasta, just to make sure it's moving and not sticking. It's all fine. But anyway, he was making a curry. Well, he used to have regular curry nights on a Wednesday. He was making a curry. And somebody had filled spice jars wrongly. They put curry powder in the cumin jar, cumin in the curry powder jar. How they managed that, God only knows, but they managed it. Along came chef, gaily chucking in cumin, or what he thought was cumin, into this curry. Puts it all in the pot, gives it a stir, goes home. Doesn't taste it, he doesn't know. And leaves the curry on the stove for the evening shift to come along and serve to the customers. And then as the evening goes on, these curries keep coming back untouched. Like one forkful eaten out of these curries. What's wrong with the curry tonight? Tasted it and realised it was inedible. It was so hot, it was inedible. It became a challenge amongst customers to see if anybody could actually finish it. But that's one of the dangers if you don't taste it. So I'm a great advocate. Taste, taste, taste as you go along. It's also nice. Well, you think it's nice to eat. You want to taste it. That's half the pleasure. Okay, so now we've got about 3 minutes, 4 minutes while we wait for the pasta to cook. So, done Victories, done Bob Mortimer. What else can I fill in with?
Any
Variations on
questions?
this.
Okay.
We're going to do some variations because the reason I thought this would be a good one to do is A, it's very simple. B, it's very nice. C, it's quick. But once you've got the basic tomato sauce, you can play around with it, vary it. If you happen to be vegetarian, you can, for instance, leave out the meatballs, chop up some courgettes, a bit of aubergine, some mushrooms, fry them off with the onions at the start. Get some peppers, chop some bell peppers up, put them under the grill so that you lightly char the skins and then take the skins off, chop those up, put them in as well. You've got really nice kind of tomato vegetable based pasta sauce. Or you can, if you're feeling lazy, buy a packet of sausages, throw the sausages in instead of the meatballs. Or chop sausages up, mix them in with the sauce. If you fancy something a bit different, forget the meatballs again, get some smoked bacon. Cook off some smoked bacon when you're cooking off the onion. Add in some chilies. Again, being careful with the chilies, because once you put them in, you can't take them out. And you've got a nice smoky bacon chili sauce for pasta. You can potentially just take the tomato sauce. It's a bit rustic, but if you simmered it gently until it was a lot thicker, you could use that as the base of a pizza. If you had a pizza base, you could use that. If you wanted something creamy rather than tomato based, with the onions, again, chop up some bacon, some mushrooms, fry those off, add some double cream and a little bit of chicken stock, and then just simmer that until it thickens. Again, very quick, very easy, very nice. You can also play around with the recipe. Ordinarily, when I'm doing this at home, or when Anita's cooking this at home, we'd add a splash of balsamic vinegar to it, just add a bit of depth to the sauce.
Fresh basil.
Fresh basil, if you've got it, just torn up and served on the top. It's delicious. I love fresh basil. Really adds to the flavours. But all those things they're nice to have. You can add a bit of
wine.
chili flakes to it. Again, add in small quantities, taste, add more, because you can't take them out. It's about playing with it depending on what you've got in your stock cupboard. None of it is necessary. Excuse me while I grab a fork. But if you happen to have the ingredients there, that one got away from me. If you happen to have the ingredients there, you're not playing. Excuse me. Right, so pasta's been on the low simmer. Probably needs about another 60 seconds to get it to being al dente. So I'm going to give that another minute. Give our sauce time to cook. Where are we? That's all right. We're still on target time. So yes, I've done the variations.
Any questions?
Any questions? Because we are almost there. And I think that is pretty much what I said at the start, 45 minutes, start to table. We will just quickly check the meatballs are cooked. You've got a meat thermometer, you can stick the probe in there, check the temperature. Brilliant. But we will do it the old-fashioned way. So clean knife, and we will just cut the meatball open. And there, you look at the inside, there's no pinkness going on, it's not watery, it's nicely cooked, still juicy, which is what you want. You don't want it dried out, but it's cooked all the way through. And because the other meatballs are the same size, I know the others are cooked as well. So there we go. If you find, as you're going along, that your sauce starts to thicken up a bit too much, you can just add some water to it. That's what I'm going to do now. Just to make the sauce go a little bit further. So a little bit of water. Mix it all in. Pasta should be done now, so I'm going to go in that. What I talked about earlier, I talked about reserving just a little bit of the pasta water. Doesn't need to be very much. You don't want your pasta soggy. And I'm going to pour this off through a colander. add just a little bit, not very much, of the pasta water to the spaghetti, because the starch in the pasta water helps stop the pasta sticking together. And there we are. Now ready to serve. So we'll take a bowl. Shall I bring it here with me?
I can move. I can move.
Depending on how you want to do it, if you're not saving any of this sauce for later or for freezing or for whatever, if you're serving it all up on the night, you can, if you wish, put your pasta in the sauce, mix it all around, and then you get a nice coating on all the pasta, the sauce, and then serve it up. Or you can do it like this. So then we just take the meatballs like so. And spoon a bit of the sauce over. Voila. And then just because I've got some and I like it, put on the top as well. I love that smell. And there you go.
I'm zooming now. You going?
Start to finish, 48 minutes.
There you go. Our dinner. Yum yum.
And that's all there is to it. Play around with it, change ingredients, whatever you like. Any questions? I'm not going to stand here like a plum.
Wow, thank you very much. No questions. I can see no hand up. I've got waving, I've got thank yous. So brilliant. Anita and Chris, thank you very much for doing this for us this afternoon. I've got my daughter beavering away in the kitchen next door to me, so I will look forward to her meatballs later on. I have to say, you've made me very hungry.
Good.
So that was the third of our 4 sessions. So tomorrow it will be Neil doing our chicken casserole. So please join us for the chicken casserole tomorrow.